Hello Idle Hero fans, thank you for joining me today for part 3 of my tier list videos. For this episode I'm going to be looking at the Mages, which is kind of like the most popular faction right now. Mages and their ability to hit 6 enemies, which would include the second slot, have become pretty much the meta, which is kind of moved on from the assassin meta that we used to have, but it's a little bit because a lot of people have adjusted to have their second unit be their strongest unit, where assassins can't usually hit that unit, so it's just a natural adaptation of the way people are playing. So anyway, let's get right into this. For third place, we're going to be looking at Earthen Doll, or Earthen Doll. Yeah, probably Earthen Doll. That's probably how that's pronounced, if I had to guess. But she is an incredibly strong mage. But she is specifically good, and I find her the third best mage because she is a dark mage, or evil, whichever you want. I'm not sure exactly what that faction is called, which makes her a staple for any team looking to use the Rainbow faction, or I think there's another faction that uses dark heroes, but it requires 2 of them, so that one's a little bit harder to make. But the Rainbow one is a lot more common, and she's pretty much going to be in every team that uses Rainbow. She's a far superior hero to Sleepless, and there's a few reasons why. Her base HP is pretty high. It's average for mages. Her speed is actually really high for mages. I think if you don't include like the buffs from the guild trees and stuff like that, I think she's the 3rd or 4th fastest unit in the game. So she usually gets her attacks off. I think the only ones that pass her are Mickey, Emily, and there's another one. Mickey, Emily, and Demon Hunter. I think those 3 heroes pass her by base speed, but I think other priests can pass her because of the guild tree. But she's faster than every unit that's not those guys. So she's going to get her attacks off pretty quickly, which is important because she is a crowd control mage. Her ability does 54% damage against all units and has a 20% chance to petrify them for 2 rounds. Now, to be fair, 54% isn't actually that high. It's one of the softer mages for damage, but the fact that it has a 20% chance to petrify is huge against 6 enemies. Especially if you can land it on that second slot like I was talking about before. That really can screw over a lot of teams that use Aiden or Flame Strike or just a very powerful assassin in the second slot, such as Kareem. I think I actually pronounced his name right for once. But yeah, you can kind of, if you can paralyze or petrify that unit in the second slot, you're going to have a lot easier time fighting many opponents in the PvP arena. And this paired with other units like Ice Blink, for example, is incredibly powerful because they both try to crowd control all units, so they work extremely well together. Her second ability is each attack has a 30% chance to petrify the unit for 1 round, and this is okay, but for most people it's not going to matter too much because she's probably going to be hitting a warrior in the front line, or like something like Mickey, and as comical as it is, even if Mickey is petrified, she can still dodge, so that's kind of an awkward thing. And the stun only lasts for 1 round, so against units like Mickey, she probably won't even really be bothered since Mickey is usually faster than Dark Earthen Doll. So this is kind of a moot ability, but it still can be nice if they do have something like Rosa, for example. If they choose Rosa or Ice Blink as their primary tank, this is an awesome ability against those units. Her third ability is Black Hole, which increases her skill damage by 87%, and that's why her first ability kind of looks weak on paper, is because skill damage by 87.5% is insane. Like that's almost doubling her base attack power. So it's almost effectively as if it's like 108%. So it's because it's 87, it's probably closer to like 95% in that area somewhere, which then puts her back on par with the average mage for damage. So even though it looked like initially that she wasn't doing the damage you would expect, because of the third ability, she definitely does. And her last ability is when her HP is lower than 30%, her attack increases by 100, and her armor decreases by 48%, which is kind of odd, especially given the name's preemptive defense, and it decreases her defense, actually. But I generally don't like these abilities because if you get to 30% on most units, if you get to 30% HP, most teams will have you killed before you can attack again because you're at such a low HP, and assassins attack the lowest unit basically in most cases. So when you try to trigger these abilities, you'll probably be dead before you can actually use them. But with Dark Earthen Doll's case, it's a bit different because she's so fast that you can usually get one more attack out when you proc this ability. And if it happens to be your actual like special ability, her first attack, then you're going to get 100% Hold on a second. Yeah, 100% attack. Sorry about that. You get 100% attack bonus, plus you get the 87.5% skill damage added on to the 54%, and she can just nuke a team for way more damage than people expect. Plus, the fact that she can petrify just makes her an all-around great unit. So, the second best mage is probably going to be a little bit obvious, and that's Aiden. Now, Aiden has been a staple for many, many teams for a long time, including myself. My main team uses him as a primary DPS in the second slot, and it's for a few reasons. He has, again, 60,000 HP, which is same as Earthen Doll, so they're looking at about the same durability. He has way more damage, though. He has like 2,000 extra damage on her, if I'm not mistaken. But his speed is a little lacking. Her speed was significantly better than his. So he's much slower, but does much more damage. And you can see that in his first ability does 84%, which is probably a little bit weaker than Earthen Doll's, due to the fact that she gets the spell increase by 87%. So the fact that this is 84 and hers is probably somewhere like 95, he's a little bit weaker here at the start. And his ability has a 75% chance to silence warrior foes, which is actually a little bit decent now because a lot of people in the higher ranks are using Asmodel, and the silence Asmodel is actually really powerful, so he doesn't use that crazy nuke that he has as his ability. And even champions like Gru and Dentalion it can help you against, to a lesser extent, of course, but still helps. His second ability is actually what makes this hero ridiculous. He gains 20% armor break and 15% attack for each killed ally. And this is why you put him in the second slot, and is also why some people tend to pair him with two weak units. They usually put him with like a light unit and a dark unit that's incredibly weak, so they die off in the first turn. And then you pair him with the rest of the units required for a rainbow faction, so you pair him with a fortress, an abyss, and a forest hero. And once those two light and dark heroes die before the second turn happens, you're going to have 30% extra attack and 40% extra armor break to smash your opponents with for that first ability. And that's going to do a lot more damage than most people would imagine. Or maybe not now because Aiden's so common, but before Aiden was a really common hero, a lot of people didn't run him, and a lot of people thought he was weak, especially because his 5-star iteration is not that strong. So in the early days, nobody used this guy, but once the 6-star bonuses had been out for like 2 months, it started to become painfully clear that Aiden, with this ability, just starts to go off. If you can get him to survive with your tank and your backline is dead, you have, 60% extra attack from your dead allies, and you get 80% armor break, which is just insane. He's essentially ignoring all armor and has a 60% bonus onto his attack. Now, his third ability is just a flat damage boost, so it gives armor break plus 32%, HP plus 25, and attack plus 25. Now, something to consider here is that, like the scenario I said before, if you do get 4 of your allies dead and you have 80% armor break and you have 32% armor break here, you are looking at true damage, essentially. They're going to take a full damage, armor ignored. The only thing that'll slow them down is going to be like Ice Blink and Rosa with their debuffs, but even then, you're probably just going to one-shot them because he's so far gone if you get 4 allies dead on your team and he hits the opponents. And his second ability, or his last ability, is Last Wish. Oh my god, this is exactly one of those examples of what I was talking about with the translations that are just all over the place. Hero's Death deals 65% damage against all enemies. And that's just such a weird way to word it. So like when you first look at it, it kind of doesn't seem right. But anyway, 65% damage when he dies is actually pretty significant, especially if he dies as one of the last heroes, because he's getting all those bonuses put into him, plus the 65%. So he even when he dies is going to kind of like explode. and take enemies with him, which is exactly what this little icon is like. This is probably one of my favorite ability icons in the game, because I can just imagine that that's actually him exploding, and he's terrified, but he's going to take everyone else with him. It's just hilarious to me for some reason. But yeah, just with his ability to scale off of allies being defeated, it basically means that if you happen to take over a fight and your opponents are being destroyed, you're probably going to win anyway, because you're beating your opponents faster than they're beating you. But even if your opponents start to get the upper hand against you, if you have an Aiden in your second slot, he can turn it around single-handedly and just obliterate your opponent's team. And that will segue us pretty much perfectly into the best mage in the game, which is Flame Strike. And this character has actually kind of broken the game in the top end right now, where you can have a team that's like full of 7 and 8 stars, and if you just happen to have a 9-star Flame Strike, you can beat teams that are a full 9-star, because her power is just ridiculous. You can tell right off the bat that her HP, 73,000, is much higher than the average mage at this point by about 13,000, considering that Aiden and Earthen Doll were around 60k. Her attack is a little bit lower to start off with than Aiden's, but I think it's on par with Earthen Doll's. Her defense is actually pretty high, and her speed is a little bit slow. So her stats are pretty fair all around, but she has high HP, so she's very survivable. Her ability does 94% attack against all enemies, plus does an additional 36 attack for 3 rounds. So that's actually ridiculous, because you're looking at about 200% plus damage altogether from this ability once those 3 rounds are up. And that's just off the charts just by itself. No one does that kind of damage except for her and potentially Asmodel, and that's why those two are often considered to go back and forth for the best hero in the game right now. But this is not the end of it. This just keeps getting worse as you go further into her abilities. Her second ability gains 13% attack and 12.5 skill damage for each killed friendly hero. So now she's basically just stolen Aiden's ability, where the more allies you lose, the stronger she gets. And hers is even better than Aiden's in my opinion, because the attack and skill damage simultaneously kind of like compound on top of each other. And the fact that she naturally has a stronger attack than Aiden anyway just makes her go over the top. She is a much better version of Aiden with just her first 2 abilities. Even if she didn't have her third and fourth ability, she would still be one of the best heroes in the game easily. Probably still even better than Aiden. But it keeps going. Her third ability is she gains 20% crit and 10% crit damage for each killed enemy hero. So it's just craziness, where if she starts to get ahead, she's going to snowball with crit and crit damage. If she falls behind, she's going to scale with attack and skill damage. And if it's a very even fight and you're kind of losing a few allies and you're killing a few of your enemies, she just becomes unstoppable. If she ends up with like 60 to 70 or 60 to 80% crit from her enemies dying, she is going to one-shot whoever is sitting in that second slot, and probably the tank too. So she just starts to go crazy when she loses a few allies and a few enemies. She's just unstoppable. The math on this is just ridiculous. And her fourth ability is increase her HP by 35, her attack by 15, and her skill damage by 25. So not only does she have the first 2, which are factored into all these things already, but the skill damage, 25% extra skill damage. Like, why did they need to do that? There's no point to this. This is just overkill for the sake of overkill. 25% on top of the fact that her skill damage is already higher than like every other mage out there. There's just no need of it. She's just too strong. She's too far gone. And you could easily make a case for her being the best hero in the game, and she probably is. If you have her as a 9-star in the second slot, you're going to destroy most teams, especially if all things are equal. If you have a full 9-star team and they have a full 9-star team, if you have Flame Strike and they don't, you've got a significant advantage on your hands. And that's kind of unfair, or not unfair, but unfortunate that the game is so balanced around one hero right now. And if you have her and Asmodel on your team, it's just nightmare. You're pretty much toast. If you have the Rainbow faction and a level 8 or 9 Asmodel and a level 9 Flame Strike, it's all over for the enemies. They got no hope. There's no way they can beat it, except in the one instance that you get lucky and you get Lutz to stun her. that is her only natural counter right now, is that Lutz can kind of take her out of the fight for a while, and hopefully your assassins or mages will kill her before she can go off. But I don't really consider that like a good counter strategy, because that's just mages in general are weak to that, and it cannot happen. Lutz's attack attacks 4 random units, so she can not get hit, and his stun procs at 80%, which is obviously a high number, but it can miss even so. So there's a lot of random variables. So even if you have Lutz on your team, he can just not like have his ability land on her properly, not stun her, and then she's gonna take over instantly. If she gets past the 2nd to 4th turn, it's just gone. So most players agree she needs to be nerfed. Even players that have her are pretty obviously like willing to accept that she's too far gone. She's too strong of a hero. She has a funny little animation too. I don't know why I just like clicking on this thing. She kind of trips out a bit. But yeah, she's just too far. She's by far the best mage and potentially the best hero in the game. So if you guys agree, just let me know in the comments. If you disagree and you think I screwed something up, oops, sorry about that, guys. I hit the mic. I don't know. That might sound terrible in recording. But yeah, if you guys think I made a mistake, let me know in the comments. Or if you just want to say I'm doing a good job or you hate what I'm doing, just let me know. I'm willing to accept all criticisms and all compliments. Thank you guys very much for watching, and have a good night.